Well, hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. So, we have a new deep dive for the upcoming champion Falcon, Joaquin Torres. He's going to be a science version of a Falcon from some of the more recent runs of the comics. And what I'm about to say is by no means going to be a commentary on the strength level of the champion. It is more so commentary on the way he is designed before we break down his abilities, everything else. I want you guys to kind of view him as a science version of a Nimrod. And again, that is not to say he's going to be as strong, as good, as weak, or whatever as Nimrod, but that is to say that he's built effectively with very similar mechanics in mind. He has two modes, offensive and defensive. Each special attack has different effects based on which mode you are in. He does apply his effects on opponent activating special attacks, similar to Nimrod when, it is either power lock or cowardice. Then on top of it all, once you reach 10 charges, the maximum amount of charges, you effectively enter your cool kid mode, and then you get the effects of both offensive and defensive modes. And pending the matchups and pending the nodes, you may be able to remain in that damage mode indefinitely. So this definitely seems to be like a lot of design inspiration from the Nimrod's kit there. Obviously with different abilities, different effects, as he is a science champion and primarily made to counter mystic champions. There are some things that I really do like about the champion. There are some things that I am quite unsure about the champion. And ultimately, I do think that Zola has a better chance to be a meta-relevant champion, but that is to say we have obviously no time yet to jump to conclusions. We're going to have to see once he actually arrives in the game, but we're going to talk about that in a bit. So, as a science champion, again, he's going to be activating two different modes. He's going to have his traumas that will serve as his damage ramp up. He has two debilitates, which are there borderline exclusively to deal with Enchantress, really. And then he has a very, very solid access to slow, some physical vulnerabilities, some additional things. But having easy access to slow, even from the beginning of the fight, if he's awakened, means that he can shut down the unstoppables and evades against majority of the champions, which is quite cool. I do find worrisome the way his damage ramps up, but again, we're gonna get to it when we get to it. So his effective rotation is, so you throw a couple combos with your light finishers in order to get your debilitates going, and then as opponent throws his specials, we can see that you change your modes, you apply traumas. Traumas do not count as debuffs, but for any other do not count as debuffs for gaining his charges. But when you're applying debuffs to your opponent, you're gaining charges. When opponent throws special attacks, you're gaining charges basically. And when he's in his damage mode, he starts stacking his debilitates on. He starts stacking his traumas on, and that is, how much of your damage is going to be arriving. Also thanks to the physical vulnerability and a somewhat small passive fury on his level 1. And so he's a science champion. We can see quite a lot of debuffs in his fight, which will synergize great with Inequity and also Despair Mastery. So effectively you can use him to shut down Evade, Unstoppable, and also Regen. You will reduce opponent's attack thanks to Inequity. He's quite chunky. He has Bulwark, and that is him effectively. Now, it is worth to mention he has virtually zero defensive value. Right, and now let's go to his full ability breakdown here. Science class, I'm not going to read the flavor text. That his base stats. And now survivability 3.5, fair enough, because he does have several mechanics that, either reduce opponent's attack, give him bulwark. He has a bit of regen from opponent's special attack, non-crits on him as well, so 3.5 is fine. Damage in 3.5, it's not necessarily a deal breaker if he does everything extremely well and, covers the right matchups. 3.5 obviously isn't ideal, but it's not awful when combined with 3.5 utility. My worry, however, is that his damage is 3.5 and it's ramp up. Because often Kabam, gives ramp up champions here's like 4 in damage or 5 in damage, but him being marked down as 3.5 and having a fairly substantial amount of time till he can reach his max potential is a bit worrisome. So a lot of questions here will be whether Falcon does have enough damage. So ease of use 2.5, I don't think it's too bad. You're just gonna need to learn him a bit, and then actually using him shouldn't be too tricky. At the very least, by the looks of it, you do not need to throw like special attacks or how like you do not need to like, you know, do some very odd specific things in order to keep on going with him, as long as you kind of know what you're doing. Utility 3.5, that's solid, good. Defender strength 1.5, effectively he's barely better than Groot. So he's quite useless on defense. So as an overall champion value proposition, that does not necessarily speak volumes for him being more desired either. At the same time, you know, not every champion can be a defender, so let's just move on. Strengths and weaknesses. Strengths: accessible, debilitate, and slow. That is very solid strength description. With effective counter against one of our target champions, Falcon needed easily accessible debilitate as well as slow debuffs. Gaining a plethora of utility out of various non-damaging debuffs Falcon can apply, keeping debilitates at max stacks. Tends to be the chase to help alleviate stress with keeping the other debuffs up, allowing it to focus on damage output. Strong physical damage, in between the traumas, in between the physical resistance, everything else. So he's virtually exclusively dealing physical damage. Also reliable special damage mitigation and defensive capabilities. That just typically, as an attacking champion, means that you can be more aggressive. You can take some special attack hits in a block if you need to stay nearby the opponent, and so on and so forth. Now, don't know if, you know, general chunkiness is the word to use here, but it's definitely not a bad thing to have. You want your attackers to be chunkier rather than flimsier. But weaknesses, so physical resistance messes with him quite royally, because that's, you know, his sole damage delivery method is through physical means. Cleanse and purify, obviously, just like with most science champions, that would be quite a big issue. Messing with regeneration. One thing that Falcon can do well is regenerate damage from special attacks, whether he was hit by them or blocked the hit. Being able to mess with his regeneration ability will significantly hinder one of his defensive strengths, which doesn't really matter. I mean, like, in most cases. It shouldn't matter too much when you're attacking, because there aren't too many champions that will be reversing your regen unless you're getting smacked in the face. And again, he has zero use as a defender, so figuring out ways how you can heal him faster shouldn't be particularly important. Unblockable. Falcon has an answer to both unstoppable and evade while slowing his kit, but still has no true answer to unblockable. Again, that's bullshit kind of thing. And like, most champions are weak to unblockable, you know. There are like 10% of the champions, if that can counter unblockable, and then 90% are weak. But yeah, being unable to parry to ramp up velocity charges will slow him down. Fair enough. So let's carry on. Abilities. Hybrid physiology. Falcon's heart vampiric biology allows him to regenerate unnaturally. Falcon instantly regenerates 40% of the damage taken during the opponent's special attacks. This potency scales plus 10% flat for every special attack the opponent uses up max of 3 times. We have seen this ability kind of similar to anti-venom for most part. And it's definitely not awful to have. Falcon cannot regenerate damage from critical hits, so just about exactly anti-venom, really. Falcon's lethal talents allow for deadly finishing strikes. Falcon's fourth light attack inflicts 12.5% debilitate debuff for 20 seconds. These are paused during opponent's special attacks max stack 2. Again, it's primarily to deal with enchanters. Falcon does not gain a precision buff when he's using Dexterity Mastery. Instead, he pauses personal trauma debuffs on the opponent for 5 seconds. This effect goes on cooldown until Falcon activates his next special attack. So this is the pseudo buff immunity that we know. It's not buff immune, but unless there are some buffs being placed on you specifically, for all intents and purposes in a generic fight, you will gain 0 buffs because you don't gain Dexterity buff, which often is the only one that you do gain. So yeah, it's kind of like Quicksilver, kind of like Shuri, Silk, I believe, so on and so forth. Red Wing Instincts. Falcon starts each fight with his trusted sidekick Red Wing at his side in a defensive instinct. Falcon benefits from different effects while Red Wing is in different instincts. Red Wing swaps instincts when Falcon lands a second medium attack or after opponent's special attack. So this is very similar to Nimrod. Nimrod also can change his modes manually, or they change automatically after X amount of time. This time around here, it's after opponent throws a special attack. When Red Wing swaps instincts, Falcon inflicts physical vulnerability debuff, reducing physical resistance by 1500 for 4 seconds. This cannot be inflicted if already active. So you do want to wait out opponent's special attacks. You do want your instincts to change in general in order to get this physical vulnerability, and then kind of significantly improve your damage, because not only your hit damage is going to be higher, then the trauma damage is also going to be higher, so you kind of get a double benefit from this physical vulnerability. Defensive instinct, gain a bulwark passive, increasing block proficiency by 1200, making him chunkier. When the opponent activates special attack, inflict a non-stacking slow debuff for 16 seconds. Very solid. And aggressive instinct, while the opponent's suffering from slow effect, they are more aggressive, and Falcon's attacks have 45% chance to inflict a 5% trauma debuff for 15 seconds. Max stacks 25. Dash attacks pause Falcon's slow debuff for 4 seconds. So there you go. So this instinct effectively always has to be followed by the defensive one. It does barely anything unless your slow is active. It also leads me to believe that it could be quite hindersome champion, and he completely gets shut off if he can't land that slow, isn't he? Because if there is no slow, there's no trauma or anything else. So champions that are slow immune or have a quicker debuff expiration, or it's weird. So let's say Destroyer would wreck the guy. Fair enough. Velocity, max stacks 10. Gain 1 velocity charge when Falcon inflicts the opponent with a non-damaging debuff, excluding trauma debuffs. Additionally, gain 1 charge when the opponent activates special attack. Straightforward enough. When at max velocity charges, Red Wing reaches peak performance, activate a special attack to combine the effect of both instincts for 20 seconds and removing all charges. While active, reaching max velocity charge refreshes this and re-inflicts his physical vulnerability debuff. So this is effectively how you enter your, cool kid mode. The big boy mode to get both benefits. Special attack 1, lift off. The first hit inflicts a non-stacking 20% special weakness debuff for 16 seconds, which I think is, fairly shit debuff to be honest. But okay. The first hit, aggressive instinct, the first hit grants an unstacking 1600 fury passive for 20 seconds and 1 velocity charge, which I think is significantly better effect here. But fair enough, so that's level 1. And special attack 2, swift kicks. Pause all non-damaging debuffs other than stun on the opponent during this attack for 6 seconds after. An aggressive instinct, each hit inflicts a personal trauma debuff, so you ramp up significantly quicker. Special attack 3, take to the skies, gain 5 charges, inflict 1% special weakness debuff for 20 seconds, while active trauma debuffs now also grant velocity charges, so it kind of again supercharges you, but in general you will not want to use this. Signature ability, quite important for him as well. Increase the potency of Falcon's Bulwark passive by 50%, so you get tankier, which is not the biggest of deals. Falcon deals a burst of 2000 physical damage when the opponent's unstoppable or evade effects fail to trigger due to ability accuracy reduction, cooldown 1 second. It's just neat, a bit of extra damage in some specific matchups, which I suppose is okay. I don't think it's super important though. Falcon's physical vulnerability debuff from swapping instincts now pauses during all special attacks. That's very important because that physical vulnerability again is pulling in a ton of work. After the start of each fight, inflict a slow debuff for 12 seconds. This is removed if the defensive instinct slow activates. This again kind of gives him a better, quicker start of the fight. I think he's actually quite... it need to be seen because this ability is quite important. I think rest, for most part, yeah, you want that slow from the beginning of the fight, but without the special... I mean, there will be situations where this is really useful, but in generic fight, I don't think this will matter too much. I don't think this will matter too much in generic fight, and I don't think this will matter too much in a generic fight. So I think for most part, this is the big thing in the SIG ability, so need to see what is the difference in damage overall. And that is Falcon. Recommended Masteries, Despair, Inequity, of course, Resonate. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, that makes sense. Dexterity Mastery. Oh, no shit. And recommended Relics, Ant-Man Balgast, Hulk Balgast, Captain America Balgast. So basically any science relic. Okay. I'm gonna be honest, like, I hope he does well. I wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't put a ton of money on it. But obviously, it remains to be seen. If we take a look at matchups, obviously against most of the Mystics, should be doing quite well. Right? He is effectively made as an Enchantress counter. He should be quite good against the Enchantress, which is a problem in the game. But other than that, you know, yeah, he counters just about everything. For instance, Sasquatch's kit. But it will not matter much if he takes like 90 seconds or 80 seconds to get down Sasquatch for battlegrounds purposes. Obviously, for questing and stuff like that, it can be quite useful, and I'm sure that, you know, 6 months down the line, we will need this guy for a specific challenge or a specific Eternity of Pain type of fight or something. But in day-to-day basis, we'll see. Yeah, no immunity, so Man-Thing, you know, you can probably take down Man-Thing, but you're not buff immune, you're not nullify immune, and you're not poison immune, so, you know, that could be an issue. Kindred, for instance, if he goes stun immune, then you can either against irritation, don't. I guess you could say against this guy, I am not super sold. Actually, I would have much more favorable impression of him if he had some sort of bypass miss mechanic in his kit, because that is quite active and important now as well. That is one of the most important things against Enchantress, to eliminate that miss RNG effect of her spells. That would also be helpful against stuff like Ebony Maw and a handful of other champions. Without that miss bypass, I don't know, I'm just not super, like, again, obviously he's gonna suck against just about every science defender. He's not meant to be good, even though we do have science champions that do well enough against science champions. Tech champions, do I think he's gonna be great against, you know, stuff like Fam or Sentinel? No, he's not gonna be good against Sentinel. I don't think he's gonna be good against Sentinel at all. I don't think he's gonna be good against Red Skull or just about anybody here. Mutants, Onslaught, yeah, maybe. Nah, but again, you can't really parry Onslaught, or you don't want to parry Onslaught, so that could be a massive issue. Yeah. I'm not super sold on that. Bishop, Havoc, fine, you know, decent-ish, not amazing. Domino, absolutely not. You know, stuff like Toad and ATC. Wolverine Rep next, can't have his regen thing is modified, can't parry really him, so I don't think he's gonna be too great against most of those. Cosmic, will he do Master of Fine? Absolutely not. He could be decent against Thanos thanks to his slow. Not amazing, but decent, because yeah, you do have slow, so you can be aggressive against him, and that should be okay. Yeah, I don't know. Because even in Mystic class, again, I don't think he's particularly amazing against Kindred. I don't think he's going to be... I don't know. Let me know what you guys think. By all means, obviously, we need to wait for him to arrive in the game to draw final conclusions, but I am definitely not in the team Joaquin Torres camp right now. See you in a bit. Bye-bye. Hello there guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about